The charity gala was in full swing. Celebrities, athletes, and business moguls filled the elegant ballroom. Waiters carried trays of champagne, cameras flashed, and guests mingled over expensive hors d'oeuvres. Lamar Jackson arrived, all smiles, ready to give back to the community. This event wasn't about football, it was about making a real impact. But as he took his seat at a VIP table, he overheard a conversation that stopped him cold. A group of wealthy donors laughed quietly, shaking their heads. It's cute that these athletes try to act like real philanthropists, but let's be honest, they're just here for the publicity. Lamar gripped his glass, exhaled, and made a decision. What he did next? It left the entire room speechless. Lamar Jackson had never been the type to seek attention. He did not donate money for headlines. He did not show up to charity events for photo ops. This ? This was personal. The charity hosting the event was one he had supported for years, a foundation dedicated to providing resources for underprivileged kids. Lamar had quietly funded scholarships, organized youth football camps, and even paid hospital bills for struggling families. But now, he sat at his VIP table, listening as a group of wealthy donors mocked athletes like him. They play a game for a living, one scoffed, swirling his wine glass. They're not real businessmen. They don't understand true giving. A few others chuckled in agreement. They cut a check and think they're heroes, another added. Meanwhile, guys like us are the ones making the real impact. Lamar tensed, gripping the edge of his chair. He had two choices, ignore it or make a statement they would never forget. Before he could react, the event host took the stage. The microphone buzzed as the host smiled, looking out at the crowd. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you all for being here tonight. We are here to honor some of our most generous donors, people who have made a real difference in this community. Polite applause rippled through the room. The host continued, calling up a select group of donors to the stage for recognition. Lamar watched as the same group of smug executives stood up, buttoning their expensive suits, grinning as they walked to the stage. They smirked down at Lamar, knowing he had heard every word they had said. When one of them took the mic, he glanced in Lamar's direction, his voice laced with condescension. It's always nice when celebrities show up, he said, pausing for laughter. But let's be honest. Real philanthropy happens when people who understand finance step in to help. The room chuckled lightly. Lamar just sat there, silent, but his mind was racing. When the host announced him as the next honoree, Lamar stood up, adjusted his jacket, and walked toward the stage. And when he spoke, he did not just respond. He changed the entire conversation. Lamar Jackson walked to the stage with a calm, steady stride. The wealthy donors grinned smugly, already convinced they had made their point. To them, Lamar was just another athlete trying to play philanthropist. As he reached the podium, he took a deep breath. He glanced out at the audience, hundreds of people watching, waiting, expecting just another thank you speech. He looked over at the group of donors, their smiles unshaken. Then, he set the microphone down. The room fell silent. Lamar slowly reached into his jacket and pulled out his phone. He tapped the screen a few times, then turned it around for everyone to see. On the screen, a photo of him standing in the middle of a struggling neighborhood, surrounded by kids, holding a check. Not for PR, not for cameras, but because he had personally paid for a community center to be built there. The audience leaned in, intrigued. Lamar finally spoke. I hear a lot of people talk about what it means to give back, he said, his voice calm but sharp. The room hung on his words. I respect every person in this room, he continued, glancing toward the donors. But let me ask you something. His eyes locked onto theirs. When was the last time you actually met the people you're helping? A murmur spread through the audience. The executives shifted uncomfortably. Lamar kept going. You write big checks, you get tax breaks, you get your names on buildings, he said. That's great, but have you ever looked a struggling kid in the eye and told them they matter? The donors had no response. Lamar lifted his phone again, scrolling to another picture. Him at a youth football camp, sitting on the grass, talking to kids who had no father figures in their lives. "This," he said, tapping the screen, "this is what charity means to me." The audience was no longer just watching. They were feeling it. The same executives who had mocked him. They sat frozen, their smirks gone. Lamar had not just responded. He had just made them question everything. The ballroom was dead silent. Every eye was locked on Lamar Jackson. The wealthy donors who had mocked him. Their smug grins had vanished. Lamar let the silence linger. He had not insulted them. He had not called them out directly. But his words? They had done more damage than any argument ever could. Finally, he spoke again. "I grew up in a place where people don't talk about charity," he said, his voice steady, "because no one expects to be helped." He looked around the room, scanning the faces of businessmen, politicians, and celebrities. For some people, a donation is just a number, a tax write-off, a way to get your name in the news. He paused, then tapped his phone screen again. Another photo appeared, him standing in a hospital room with a young boy battling cancer, holding his hand, smiling. "This is not about money," Lamar continued. "This is about showing up." The audience shifted, uncomfortable. "You see, I don't just cut checks," he said. "I sit with kids in hospitals. I go to struggling neighborhoods. I spend time with families who don't know how they're going to pay rent." He looked at the donors again. They had nothing to say. "Money helps," Lamar admitted, "but it is not everything." He pointed at the screen, back at the image of the hospital visit. "That little boy," he said, "he didn't care about my bank account. He cared that I was there." A murmur spread through the crowd. Lamar let out a slow breath. "So, for those who think athletes don't belong in philanthropy, let me say this." He straightened his posture, shoulders back, eyes locked onto the entire room. "I do not give back because I have to. I give back because I know what it is like to have nothing." The room erupted. At first, it was a single clap, then another, and within seconds, the entire ballroom was on its feet, cheering. The executives at the VIP table? They sat motionless, silent, exposed, because Lamar had not just answered them, he had shut them down completely. The ovation shook the room. People rose to their feet, clapping, cheering, some even wiping away tears. Lamar Jackson hadn't raised his voice. He hadn't thrown insults. He had just told the truth. And now, the entire room respected him for it. The wealthy donors who had mocked him, they weren't laughing anymore. They sat still, stiff, faces red, realizing they had just been exposed, not by anger but by pure facts. As Lamar stepped down from the stage, people reached out to shake his hand, to congratulate him. But then, one of the executives from the VIP table stood up. He adjusted his suit, cleared his throat, and walked toward Lamar. The crowd quieted. Was he going to try and save face? Was he going to defend himself? Number instead? He extended his hand. I misjudged you," he admitted, his voice quieter than before. Lamar looked at him for a moment, then shook his hand firmly. "Now you know." The executive nodded. "I'd like to do more, to actually be involved. If you're open to it, I'd like to learn from you." Lamar raised an eyebrow, surprised. Then, he nodded. "Let's talk," he said simply. The audience gasped. Some clapped again. Others murmured in shock, because this wasn't just about Lamar proving a point. He had just changed someone's entire perspective. Lamar walked back to his table, shaking more hands, smiling, knowing this moment was bigger than football. This was about more than just shutting down haters. This was about real change. And the best part? The moment was just getting started. Because by the time the night was over, the entire world would know what had just happened. By the time Lamar Jackson left the gala, the internet had already taken over. Clips of his speech spread like wildfire. Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. Every platform was flooded with reactions. Lamar Jackson just shut down every arrogant billionaire in that room without even raising his voice. Some people flex their money. Lamar flexed his impact. This is what real leadership looks like. The video hit 1 million views in just a few hours. Athletes, celebrities, and even business leaders reacted to the moment. One well-known NBA player tweeted, "Lamar just gave a masterclass in humility. This is how you handle doubters." A former NFL legend posted, "I wish more athletes handled criticism like this. No ego, just truth." Even people who had never followed Lamar before commented, "I didn't know much about him before, but after this?" Respect. Meanwhile, the business executives who mocked him, they had nothing to say. The company one of them represented issued a statement saying they were proud to support meaningful philanthropy. But the internet wasn't buying it. Someone dug up an old interview where one of the executives had dismissed athletes as entertainers, not real leaders. People flooded the comments, reminding him that he had been publicly humbled. One viral post summed it up perfectly. You can talk about real charity all you want, but when it came time to prove it, Lamar Jackson had receipts. Y'all had excuses. Meanwhile, the charity Lamar was supporting, they saw a massive surge in donations. People wanted to support something real. And Lamar, he didn't post about it. He didn't tweet about it. He just kept doing the work. Because for him, this was never about winning an argument. This was about making a difference. And the world? They were finally paying attention. Lamar Jackson never argued. He never got defensive. He let his actions speak louder than words. The wealthy donors thought they could humiliate him, but in the end, they were the ones humbled. Some people give for attention. Others give to change lives. Lamar? He made sure the world knew the difference. What do you think? Did Lamar handle this situation perfectly? Comment below. Like, share, and subscribe for more powerful NFL stories.